there, this is an update to my GUNSLINGER Vex build. At its core, this is a gunslinger style setup which focuses a bit on shotguns and settles for a mid-term between Vex's burst and kill skill setups. Looking to make gunplay feel snappy through quick reloads alongside bleed paired with high base damages and a nice amount of fire rate boosts, without depending on mortal terror for damage scaling. We'll be playing into the strengths of weapons like the TK's Wave, the Baylor and Dullahan Jacobs shotguns, Hot Slugger if you like it, 7th Sense, Bonnie and Clyde, Rooker, and an assortment of other strong underbarrel options like the Shrapnel Cannon and Space Laser, alongside kinetic weaponry in general, although you can do elemental quick swaps. By stacking up on passive damage boosts, we achieve a constant formula output, with a bit of an increased ceiling for some specific weapons and underbarrels since we can rep kit for that 1-point wonder in Bloodshot and some extra massive bleeds. As always, the build has a Mobalytics written guide. There you can always find the most up-to-date versions of any builds I post, alongside more variants for each build that may not be covered in the videos. So let's go over our skill trees. Here I'll be going over the main setup, and then quickly summarizing an alternate setup you can try if you wish. In blue tree, we get idle hands for the very nice reload speed boost. In green, we start with guns and needles and the fiendish invigoration combo. Guns and needles allows us much more frequent rep kit usage, and in fact it also cools down our rep kits while they're active whenever we kill something. 1 point in this can be enough, but I like the second one for consistency, it's up to you. Fiendish Invigoration is a great DPS boost that has impact even on the shoot reload style weapons, since fire rate affects how soon you can shoot after a reload. Leeching Attunement needs no introduction, it'll be granting us damage through Blood is Power, Survival and DPS all in one. Bloodletter is another central skill to the setup. The main types of weapons we'll be focusing on usually have high bleed synergy. Material Components is a further boost to our hits and to bleed through the double dip of kinetic damage and the singular kinetic status boost. Target Prescience. This skill works per pellet and per bonus element, meaning it has decently high synergy with shotguns and any multi-hit style weaponry, being useful to trigger certain effects like ricochets and is a nice damage boost on non-weak point hits. There is, however, the matter that the crits from this skill do not currently benefit from gear critical damage boosts, like Deadeye, Weapon Card Crit, and Enhancement crit damage. And if you're consistently hitting your weak spots anyway, then this skill might not be of much help. It does, however, still stack effects like Deadeye and Sequencer, and is useful for certain situations like Atlas trackers and also stickies that are not on a crit spot, alongside some underbarrels that will definitely not be hitting a crit spot consistently. All this is to say, you can experiment with these 5 points if you wish. You could max drink Foe instead, for example, or even put enough in blue to gain Coven access with Deadringer Spectres. The same goes for Conjunction. Conjunction works well due to Teen Witch, guaranteeing us nearly the full boost on every shot. However, it's not that significant of a damage boost. These 5 points can be moved into Drink Foe if you wish. It's a choice that largely depends on the weapons being used. Ars Arcana boosts our bleed damage. Essence Leech further feeds Blood is Power. Blood is Power is an amazing bonus kinetic damage that does a lot of the heavy lifting of the build, through the amount of lifesteal we have. And then I put this final 1 point here in Bloodshot that gives us a little bit more burst for certain weaponry. You can play around at this point if you wish. It's useful for certain boss scenarios where you're gonna use burst guns, and by burst guns I mean bursty guns that do a lot of damage in a few damage instances or at once, so it can be useful for that since it grants our shots access to skill damage. As for augments, you have options. You're not forced to augment swap for bossing or mobbing, but since the options are here, I will detail them. Grave Harvest is the ideal augment for mobbing. You can also pick up the soul orbs from a distance by spamming the interact key as soon as they drop. Witchy Triggerfinger and Geist Wave are both good for bossing, and one can feel better than the other depending on weaponry. If you just intend to massively burst a boss as soon as possible, then Geist Wave is usually the pick. If you're gonna use a deeper mag weapon that can refresh Eldritch Blast fast enough, or even stack a bunch of stickies, then you want to consider Witchy Triggerfinger. As for using a capstone, Heartpiercer is too slow and can turn off Blood is Power temporarily. One niche use case for it would be sticky weapons that can't return Eldritch Blast fast enough. I generally avoid equipping it, just don't disregard it entirely as a solution to something you might not expect. And as far as the skill tree goes, this is it for our main setup. Now let's quickly go over the alternate setup. So this is the short overview of the skill trees for the Rainbow Gal setup, which is the alternate setup. You can see the green tree looks a lot more bare bones since we just grabbed the essentials, meaning the middle main line here and the bottom right line here alongside 1 point and Bloodshot. We do that because we want access to prismatic weaponry in blue tree. Prismatic weaponry is a very powerful bonus element. Since we always have leeching attunement up, this will be a 45% bonus element added to our damage. This skill can stack its own bleeds. This means it will take up some slots of the 20 slots we have available for bleed stacks. However, it should still result in a general increase to bleed damage. If you ever suspect this is reducing your bleed damage, first try swapping off your What's for Dinner shield for an Amp Guardian Angel, because the What's for Dinner shock can also override your bleeds when they are at max stacks. Much like the What's for Dinner bonus shock and Blood is Power, Prismatic Weaponry also stacks Riddle You This and Contamination. This setup has access to both Deadringer and Incarnate. Deadringer with Coven and Spectres can be a very nice fallback choice since we gave up on crit chance in Green Tree. This can be very nice for bosses that have inaccessible or hard to hit crit spots, but it's also just nice in general. Do keep in mind that Spectres can override your bleeds with their own weaker bleeds, so when using them for bosses, summon at least 2 of them outside of the arena usually, and then 1 inside so it can help stack Contamination and Riddle You This for you, but that's just like a general tip, it'll be situational. And of course you can just stick to Incarnate using the tips from before on which augment to use. It's really a flexible choice here. Make sure to have Blood Sacrifice if you're using Spectres at all. This allows their deaths, be it through the drain or enemies killing them, to stack Grave Fiends for you, and Grave Thirst if you have it on your Teen Witch class mod. And Grave Thirst of course feeds Blood is Power, which is a very nice damage boost for us. So if you ever use Spectres, remember to have this skill on. What you can expect from this setup is higher damage per hit and higher bleeds, which doesn't necessarily mean higher DPS since we're losing out on a bunch of quality of life and fire rate from Green Tree. But that's the thing though, it'll be situationally better than the other and vice versa, and it has a different pace to it, alongside the more flexible action skill choices. For our specializations, the best defense is a consistent boost and a double dip for bleed. Riddle You This is very nice for our guns, and even the shotguns can stack it decently well. I Am a Gun feeds back a solid amount of gun damage as skill damage, which in turn further boosts our bleeds. Bullet Train makes combat movement and flow much better, but this can be one of your flexible slots. And speaking of flexible slots, Contamination is one of the things you can equip in place of either Riddle You This or Bullet Train. This can be less useful for mobbing, but a lot more useful for bossing than Bullet Train, for example, depending on what you're doing. It adds a lot of consistency to bleed, and adding consistency to bleed literally translates into more damage because more bleed stacks will be applied from the same source. Now with Caffeine is also an option you're free to play around with. I haven't found it extremely necessary as of yet, but it might get a lot more relevant for the upcoming content. So keep it in mind, and well, it's just damn useful in general, so yeah. Moving on to our gear. For weapons, there are many choices available here. You're pretty much able to try anything, just remember the best synergies we have here are high damage kinetic weapons, but you can do quick swaps to elemental weapons as to not lose the benefits of leeching attunement. The TK's Wave is one of the main weapon choices I like. This comes in many variants and pretty much all of them can be good and used in different ways. It's usually a bossing gun due to the projectile travel speed and pattern, but it can be used for anything. A plain Jacob's roll can reach an astounding 2.8k times 10 base damage. An Atlas Tracker can make it much more manageable for bossing. Targ Stickies have a powerful role of their own for bossing, and Targ Impact can actually make it very nice as a swap gun against vile enemies. The Baylor Epic Rarity Jacobs Shotgun is among my favorite all-around picks for anything, be it bossing or mobbing. It won't have the highest peaks for bossing, but it's definitely still good there, and for mobbing it feels amazing. The Daedalus Sniper variant is also very fun and useful, and can come in handy for hitting those crit spots, especially on bosses. The Seventh Sense is another great all-around weapon with decent slice and variety. I tend to like the sniper and shotgun daedalus modes on it. Sniper for bossing, shotgun for mobbing, but both work for either scenario to be honest. Ripper license is also very great, be it for mobbing or bossing, although for mobbing it can be a bit weird over the others and slower, but for bossing it's definitely very good. The Bonnie and Clyde is a beast of a weapon that makes short work of any mobbing and can also work fine for bossing. Make use of its special effect and it will hit great numbers. Actually, it will hit great numbers regardless, but do make use of that special effect. I also like to carry with me a capable splash weapon to deal with vile crystal enemies. That can be a Sweet Embrace, Rainbow Vomit, Wombo Combo, a Splash Underbarrel, or any other option you like. Another weapon slot option can be for underbarrels. With Bloodshot, Rooker or Kill Drones can be great combat openers and can be reutilized on every rep kit usage. But you could also just use Shrapnel Cannon, Spread Launcher, Space Laser, Beam Tosser and others that can also be Bloodshot and amped on bosses for some insta-kills. For rep kit, Warpaint is my usual favorite, but it might not always be the best. There are many perks you can roll on it that are useful for different situations or weapons. My main recommendations for it are Enrage, Reload Speed, Amp, and occasionally Fire Rate. Other rep kits with combination of these rolls are also great. You could use Reload Speed and Enrage, or Amp and Enrage, depending on the scenario. Triple Bypass is the universal safe pick, again with any of the mentioned perks. Crit Knife is the main ordnance of choice for bossing. For anything else, you have a good amount of grenades to pick from. Slippy, Firepock, Blockbuster, Scully, and any other you may like. Teen Witch is our main pick for class mod. The perma-amp it provides is simply too valuable for gun builds. Since this is not a kill-skill Mortal Terror setup, the points in Grave Thirst don't matter too much. However, you should still go for it because it'll provide nice mobbing damage and it has good synergy with the alternate Rainbow Gal setup due to Blood Sacrifice, alongside other Vex builds such as kill-skill setups. Either way, if you end up with just the passive damage boost skills like Conjunction and Corporeal, they shouldn't be bad, especially on the default Gun Gal setup. Scion is the other class mod choice available here. It can work well in general play, but it won't be overall as strong for gunplay as Teen Witch. It does have a very good application though, boss melts / one-shots through massively amped up hits creating massive bleeds. Look for the usual skill rolls, those being 5 in Bloodletter and then the rest in either material components or leeching attunement. In terms of class mod stat rolls, look for any of kinetic damage, gun crit chance, fire rate, and reload speed. For our shield, What's for Dinner is our main shield of choice, with the 150% amp being the preferable one, since we easily keep it up with Teen Witch. Other viable choices include an amp Guardian Angel for usage with Scion, and even Protean Cell can be pretty good when using Teen Witch. Now one interesting thing about Guardian Angel is that depending on the weapon you're using, it could be better than the What's for Dinner for bleed itself, because the shock from What's for Dinner can actually override your bleed stacks when you're at 20 stacks already. But that's very situational and you need to be capable of observing that actually happening or figuring out if it will happen or not. Yes, it is a min-max, but I'm just letting you know this can be a thing you can look out for if you want. Either way, you're not gonna lose out on much at all most of the time for ever using a Watts over the Guardian Angel in this build. As for enhancements, I'll be recommending the enhancements I use the most, but keep this in mind. The baseline for enhancements is match your enhancement to your weapon's manufacturer or licenses. You will inevitably run into overlaps between manufacturers and licenses where guns will fit any of multiple enhancements. You will have to judge for yourself what fits best in that case, since I cannot really spend a whole day covering all of those possibilities here, so experiment with stuff. I myself usually run Jacobs or Targ enhancements, but that's hardly a fixed rule or something. It always depends on weapons and licenses. So most of the Jacobs and Targ enhancements can be very good here, depending on the weapon and situation. Also remember that purple enhancements can roll 3 stats, so those can occasionally be much better than a legendary depending on the effect they roll. As for enhancement stat rolls, here are the ones that should interest you the most. Gun damage and gun type damage are very important because of their formula placement. Gun crit damage and gun type crit damage can be okay. Weapon equip speed also works on mode switches, which is very useful for some weapons. Gun type fire rate is very nice, gun type reload speed can be very nice, and gun type mag size can be situationally useful for many weapons. As for our firmwares, those also have a good amount of variety depending on the weapon choices. Here I have a generically good setup consisting of Tier 3 Deadeye for a lot of sub-formula when hitting crits, and Tier 2 High Caliber for the nice utility and the 10% on shotgun damage, which has nice formula placement. But there are other firmware combinations I certainly encourage you to try. Instead of going through them one by one, I'll be featuring them on screen for a while so you can take a look if you want. Each combination might favor a specific weapon more than another, a specific manufacturer or licenses more than others, so your preferences and the overall feel will influence what you end up liking more. I, for example, like going to reload speed with the single shot shotguns, and it is a personal favorite setup of mine. DDO with weapons that have any form of mode or underbarrel switch is very strong, since it can be triggered on demand. So for example, if you have an Atlas tracker weapon, or any other form of underbarrel switch like the Daedalus modes, you can trigger DDO's boost on demand by simply swapping back and forth or just actually using the other mode, depending on the weapon. Another good example, of course, is Bonnie and Clyde, which plays perfectly into this loop. And that's it for this build. But here's 2 other quick tips. Remember to active reload your single shot shotguns or guns in general. That means manually pressing the reload key after you shoot it. That skips the waiting for the fire rate interval and significantly speeds up your reloads. As for the other tip, remember that whenever you pop your rep kit for Bloodshot, your next shot turns into kinetic. This gives you some flexibility with elemental weapons since it will allow you to get your full benefits of your kinetic boosts by using them through Bloodshot. This is mainly useful for the bursty elemental weapons, so it allows you to do some funny things on bosses. And with all that said, have a nice day and thank you for watching.